The old lady in the cold. I was a senior in high school in the month of freezing, snowy January. I was in English class daydreaming about playing baseball for the Mohawks baseball team in April. I decided to get a new baseball glove since the one I had was all worn out and in bad shape. It would not last another season. I would ask my friend Bill if he wanted to go with me to the Sears sporting goods department to look for a new glove. Bill and I drove to the Sears department store in my car on Saturday afternoon. It had been snowing, so fresh snow was on the road, about 27 degrees F outside. We had the heater in the car, but we still felt cold. We finally arrived at Sears after driving for about 20 minutes and discussing the upcoming season. When we pulled into the parking lot, there were about 600 cars, and I managed to get a parking space about 5 rows back in the center of the row. Bill and I headed for the store's back entrance, with snow still falling and freezing temperatures. Entering the warm store, the sporting goods department was on the basement floor, so we took the escalator down to the basement. Looking at the baseball equipment made me feel warm inside. I touched the leather of the baseball gloves, and the smell of the leather made me want to play baseball right then and there. I found a Rawlings baseball glove I liked, though a little stiff. I had plenty of time to break it in before the season started. I headed to the cashier to pay for the glove and headed home. It was even colder outside when we left the store and walked to the car. As we walked, I could see someone standing behind my car. Getting closer, I could tell it was an older adult woman, maybe in her 70s. When I arrived at the car, she asked, "Can you give me a ride home?" Looking at her face, she reminded me of Mother Teresa, or Mama Coco, all wrinkly, watery eyes, her body trembling. She was wearing a long gray tweed overcoat with a dark gray babushka on her head and black snow boots. Her sincerity touched me. She was a stranger, but the first thought that went through my mind was that she could have been my mother in need of help. Bill and I looked at each other in a way that we weren't sure what to do. It was getting colder, and I couldn't leave her in the cold. So, I said yes and let her in the car's back seat and quickly turned on the heater so she could warm up. I asked her, "Where do you live?" and she said, "Not far." She explained that exiting the driveway of the parking lot to make a left turn and go to the street light and turn right. Once you have made a right turn, drive down until the second street and turn right again. I followed her instructions onto that second street, and there were only a few houses on that street and nearby roads due to a freeway scheduled to come in that area. As I slowly drove down the street and the car nicely warmed up, I asked, "Where's your house?" since it was primarily snow-filled fields with a few scattered homes. She replied, "You could pull over here," but there was no house. I told her, "It's okay. I will take you to your home, and it's freezing outside." The older woman insisted on pulling over and letting her out there. I was shocked, but pulled over. She said, "Thank you," and exited the car. She was not there when I drove off to turn around and head back. I looked. In not even 3 minutes, she disappeared. The snow was not high on the ground. I would see her on the ground if she had fallen, but nothing. Bill and I looked at each other in amazement. The lady was so old that she couldn't run or walk fast, so where did she go? The houses were too far apart to reach quickly. As I was driving, I thought, was this a test from God? Was that an angel sent by God testing my spirit? I am so glad that I helped the old lady, whether she was a human or an angel. To this day, I can still see her face clearly in my mind and wonder where she went, possibly back to heaven. The following story happened about a year later. Karma saved me. About 2 years after I helped the old lady in the cold, I drove to a friend's house on the east side of town. I only drove a little to that side of the city. I spent that Friday night at my friend's house, talking and watching TV. I left his house around 1:30 a.m. that cold, snowy night. I was so tired and just wanted to get home and sleep in my nice warm bed. As I drove on the freeway with the heater on and listening to music on the radio, I noticed that I was getting a flat tire about halfway back home. I pulled over to the shoulder of the freeway that ran along Lake Erie. It was now snowing mixed with rain, very cold and windy. I knew I needed to get the jack and spare tire out of the trunk, loosen the 5 lug nuts, jack up the car, remove the flat tire, replace it with the spare tire, and be on my way home. It should be pretty easy, but I knew I would freeze since I only wore a thin windbreaker jacket with no hat or gloves. I had the heater in the car on full blast until I got out to change the tire, then I turned the car off. Everything went smoothly. I pulled the jack and spare tire out of the vehicle's trunk and started loosening the lug nuts. 1 through 4 went quickly. 1 more to go, and changing the tire would be easy. Luck was not on my side on the 5th lug nut, and it would not budge. I tried with all my strength and nothing. That lug nut would not loosen. My first thought was, how will I get out of this mess? By this time, I was so cold that I was shivering. I could not call anybody and was far from a gas station. Maybe I could hitchhike to one. It was now snowing and cold, and the wind made it feel even colder. I stood at the freeway's edge with my thumb out, but no one would stop. After 15 minutes, I remember saying, "Oh God, please help me get home." Within 5 minutes, a car pulled over. I was scared, not knowing who was inside that car. 2 people were in the car, a man and a woman, and the man said, "Do you need a ride?" I said, "Yes, I do." I could feel the warm air coming from inside the car. The man said, "Get in." The lady just smiled. I locked my car and got in the back seat of their car. They said they were coming back from a concert and asked where I lived. I explained what had happened and told them where I lived. The lady said, "We can drive you home." I was shocked by their kindness. Finally, we arrived at my home. I told them to wait for me, and I will get them some gas money for their troubles. I ran into the house, entered my room, and grabbed a crisp $20 bill. I then ran back outside, but I stopped dead in my tracks. The snow was falling fast now. I could see the snow falling against the light of the street light, but they were gone. Those kind people were gone. The snow covered their tire tracks and made it look like they were never there. I felt peaceful and so grateful to be home. The old lady I helped in the cold 2 years earlier, this, I believe, was my reward for helping her from the cold. I always felt that the old lady was an angel sent by God to test my heart to see if I would help her, a total stranger, from the cold weather. It made me think she was the old lady now appearing as a younger lady who sat in the car's front seat with a fellow angel driving me home. Written by Alvin Rivera.